fallout, smoke, women crying for their sons because their sons are not, Romans killing riotous groups that are rising up. Free Judea, free our people, autonomy for Israel. You had Herod, an Ephraimite, and his dynasty. Herod's ruling, killing any potential threat, any potential Messiah. Then you had the Pharisees and the Sadducees that we learn from Josephus are not Jews by birth. No.
Brothers and sisters, they are there. We are not lost. We are scattered. We are original Hebrew.
Let's go! All praises be to the Most High God. Yeah, I say it.
I was opportune to meet my grandparents, whom from childhood had always made us to understand that we are one of the lost tribes of Israel. Okay. So from my grandmother,
Nigeria was always a united country, united by culture and several predispositions in geography and history. To be honest, when we go from as far back as we can think about it, all the migrations through Africa from the Middle East down to West Africa and right down to Southern Africa and up again to Zimbabwe and into Nigeria. And that's how Nigeria was formed. It was a migration that lumped so many people together, and different waves of migrations came. The last that came was the Fulani migration. That's the last of the many, but that was how almost all the other groups moved into Nigeria. There is a sense in which all the languages across Nigeria are actually seasoned from one source. I mean, there's a book in existence on when Igbo and Yoruba were one language. And reading that book, you don't even, on a daily basis, you listen to the two languages and you find that the root words are virtually the same across the board. And it is not only these languages. If you pursue the migration to Southern Africa, you will find that very many of the languages in Southern Africa, those migrations that move from West Africa to South Africa before moving up again to Central Africa, all of them have common root words. In fact, if you listen to Zulu speech, you will hear Edo words that mean exactly the same things across the board. So that when we are discussing how different we are, and you see a Kanu telling us that he's Jewish, the truth is that the Jewish migrations into Africa pulled so many of the different groups together. If an Igbo man is a Jew, then the Yoruba man is also a Jew. If an Igbo man is a Jew, then the Yoruba man is also a Jew. The truth is that all those migrations had common sources. And so...
And ethnicity is a cult? What's up, Zion Dynasty? This is your favorite dreaded Israelite, the man, the myth, and the legend, Mr. JB Zion. Y'all, show me some love, and welcome back to the channel, family. Welcome back to Zion Dynasty. Your boy about to hit y'all with that haymaker of legend, that boop, 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 boop. Dang, all glory, honor, dominion, and power to the Most High. Yeah, I say it. The Redeemer of Zion, the Resurrector of the dry bones of Ezekiel, the entire house of YESHUA. All praises, honor, and glory to the Most High Yahweh, Bahashim, Yahweh Shai. Greetings to all my Israelite brothers and sisters, not just y'all, but all the sojourners of Zion. And y'all, we about to go into this thing, boy. I'm pumped, I'm ready. It's all, I gotta tell y'all, family, there is an all-out war against Joseph. Y'all, I cannot fathom this thing. Y'all don't know how I did a whole praise dance this morning, rejoicing that the Most High is using Zion Dynasty, using y'all, my family, because I could not do this without y'all, to stand for Joseph. You got Israelites, y'all, that are coming against the seed of Joseph. The son that Jacob said, let the name of my fathers, let the name of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob rest on the crown of Joseph. You got Israelites coming against that. I count it all joy. Y'all are attacking the same way. Check this out. Reuben and the brothers wanted to kill Joseph. Judah said, no, that's sell him into slavery. And the Jewish people funded, I got to tell the truth, y'all, they funded the transatlantic, and Negroes are siding to fight against Joseph. Oh, what a great time we living in. Shout out to all the Ephraimite Moors, all of my Ephraimite family, all my house of Joseph that's just standing strong with it. Yes! Yoruba and Ephraim of the tribe of Joseph. I'm telling y'all, we finna go into it. Y'all, this might be a multi-part series, but I'm gonna do a history of the Moors exhaustive study, because to understand the oral tradition of the Yoruba that say that they are the children of Ephraim that came from Morocco in 1492, around that time period when the Sephardic Israelites were banished out of Spain, they migrated. If you look at a map, Morocco is directly above Nigeria. So it is far west, Morocco is far west. They would have migrated directly down from Morocco into present day Nigeria. So to understand their old tradition of them being the children of Ephraim, we have to go into the history of the Moors. Who are the Moors? What is this Moors? That M-O-O-R. A lot of y'all may not have even heard of the Moors. And a lot of our people think that the Moors were, oh, those were Africans or those were Arabs. There is a lot of misconception on who the Moors were. They were indigenous Amazigh Berbers, right? They are related to Daya el-Kahina, the Ephraimite princess, right? The warrior, those Maghrebian inhabitants, that the oldest religion of Africa, y'all understand, is Judaism. These Berbers practiced Torah. Where did they come from? They were descendants of Joseph, descendants of Ephraim, these Ephraimite families that settled in the Maghreb region of Africa. And we're going to go through that scholarship. But first, family, I'm going to show y'all a brief clip by an excellent channel, a Mexim. They do an excellent job of scholarship. Shout out to the Elder Bay. I think his name is Pimiento. He is a historian with a PhD in history, does great history connecting the Moabite roots of Ruth, the Almoravid dynasty, and connecting that biblical lineage of Dawood into this African era of the Moors. So I'm going to show y'all a brief clip that he did where he goes into this massive period of the Moors where black people ruled the earth from 711 CE all the way to 1492 when King Ferdinand and Queen Isabella of Spain finally overthrew that Granada stronghold and Alhambra, that palace, that winter palace. They kicked out all of those Moors through treachery. First they said they were going to allow them to stay there if they converted to Christianity, but you had a lot of crypto Jews, a lot of these secret Moorish Ephraimite that were Islamic behind the scenes, that were practicing Torah behind the scenes. So I'm going to show y'all that clip before I just go into that history. Then we're going to go into some scholarship. We're going to deal with this oral tradition of the Yoruba. So let's check out this clip. All praises.
The failure of many historians to really address, as I coined some years ago, the Moorish legacy, to bring out the truth about the Moorish legacy, is what has led to the level of ignorance that still exists today. Folks didn't know that they were, Moors. Who were the Moors? They just knew they were Negroes or black, right, or colored folks. So from 711 begins this increased connection to other parts of the Islamic world. The largest empire, larger than the Roman Empire, larger than the Greek Empire. And it results in bringing knowledge in different areas of metallurgy. You have people having access to ancient knowledge. And one of the most dominant and noteworthy aspects of this, of course, is then the advances in the sciences. That's what's so disturbing, is that the hiding of that great legacy that had tremendous impact. (710) or 711 of the Common Era, or AD, Anno Domini, basically is when the Moors, or when the African Islamic armies and Asiatic Islamic armies invade the Iberian Peninsula. Most of them are coming from North and Northwest Africa, and most of them, in terms of the troops, are Amazi, or so-called Berber. But the leadership is coming from Damascus. They're Syrian, and part of what's known as the Umayyad dynasty. So they invade the land. But what's interesting about what's going on is, well, there are two things. One, there'd always been Africans and people from the Near East, Asian peoples, going into the Iberian Peninsula, what we know today is Spain and Portugal. So that was not unusual. There was always exchange back and forth across the Straits of Gibraltar, which used to be called the Pillars of Hercules, in reference to when the Greeks had influence. But with this invasion, which is largely the result, I would say, of two or three things that are going on. One is that the religion of Islam is indeed spreading. So you have larger numbers of people in Africa and other parts of Asia, and in some parts of Southern Europe, but primarily not so much because it starts, of course, in the Arabian Peninsula, who are either converting to Islam on their own or being encouraged to convert, usually for purposes of trade, for example, and fitting in. But the other thing that's happening is that the Christian population in the Iberian Peninsula, led by people like King Roderick, are not really treating their own population very well. So you have Christians who are poor in these regions that are dominated by Christian monarchs like Roderick, who also is ruling over a Jewish population, the Sephardic or Sephardim community. And as a result, the disgruntled populations in the Iberian Peninsula, made up of Christians and poor Christians and Jews, knows about this new religion that is spreading in Africa, in the Maghreb, in Northwest Africa, and in other parts of the East. And some historians recognize, and I say some because I'm talking about a topic that's very broad, but some historians recognize that clearly the disgruntled Christian population didn't have any great allegiance to maintaining the elites, the latifundia, that were in charge of the Iberian Peninsula, especially with King Roderick.
So family, as you see, the era of the Moors was the greatest time period for Black history. Now, I'm gonna give y'all a lot of different books that I use that you can go into more detail on the time period of the Moors. One of them is Stanley Lane Poole. He is one of the greatest authors. These are one of the top historical books of the history of Africa going into the Moorish period by Stanley Lane Poole. The story of the Moors in Spain and the story of the Moors after Spain during the fall of the Moorish Empire. Y'all check those books out. Now, as you guys see, the Moorish Empire was when Black people ruled the earth. A lot of advances in medicine and the arts and science, astronomy, astrology, a lot of that occurred during this time period. There are more public libraries within Granada, Spain than anywhere in Europe. They have public restrooms, public baths, all of that. Even when you graduate, y'all see that the Moors wear those cylindrical representing 360 degrees of enlightenment with the tassel on it. When a person graduates high school or college, they have the all black on with a similar cap with the tassel on it as well. That gets into the Moorish era where they brought scholarship, they had libraries, they had research, they had advances in science and all of these things, right? So also during this time period, we see that there was a battle between the Christian North, the Romans, and these Black Africans. Some of them practice Islam, some of them practice Judaism. Now, ethnically speaking, these Moors were Ephrati,
Amazigh Berber. They were all the same Ephraimite blood, but some of them you see practice Islam, where some of them practice Torah. Now, where did this whole Moorish empire come from? Now, as you saw in that clip, he talked about how the Moors, those that led this whole campaign, they came from Syria. They called themselves Syrians. During the time of the fall of the Syrian Empire is when you had Israelites, according to Derek Lane, the anthropologist, migrate from Syria, go through Arabia, and settle in Africa. I'm gonna show y'all another clip by this brother that goes into more detail, connecting the biblical lineage into the lineage of the Moors through Ruth. This is why I tell y'all the book of Ruth is so powerful, because it shows the Ephraimite birth of that lineage. And this is where you hear black people saying the Afro-Asiatics, you hear the Moors say Afro-Asiatic. Ruth was an ancient Moabitess woman that was from the region of Moab, but this is not the modern Chinese people, but the ancient Afro-Asiatic people. Black people were originally that people, that Afro-Asiatic strain, right? The eyes and all of that were black people. So we see that Afro-Asiatic strand when you see the Moors call themselves Moabites. This is in conjunction with Ruth's lineage, that Dawood lineage. Now, before I go too deep into that, I'm gonna show you another clip by this brother, because I got a lot I gotta get to y'all. I'm gonna show y'all another clip by this brother showing you Christ's genealogy, going into detail on Christ being linked to Ruth, being linked to that Moabite Afro-Asiatic blood. This goes into the Moroccan oral tradition. A lot of these Moors were chiefly found in Morocco. Some people say that Moor is synonymous with Morocco, right? So you had out of Morocco this kingdom of Ephraimite Berbers. You also see El Kahina or Daya, the Ephraimite princess, that fought against the invading Europeans that tried to come into Africa. And the Europeans, these Romans, named Africa after these Afriyat Banu Ephraim people. This is why I tell y'all Africa was named, linked to Ephraim, these indigenous Ephraimite, Ephraimite, Berber, Amazigh people that dwelt in North Africa. And those people would eventually migrate deeper into Africa and become the sub-Saharan haplogroup, right? The Yoruba, the Igbo, those Nigerians, when they had to go deeper into Africa to flee persecution. Now, this goes right into the oral tradition of the Yoruba.
You know, Israelites in southern Nigeria and in the country next door used to be called Dahomey.
Right, I've read about Dahomey.
Yeah, but now called Benin.
Benin.
In fact, that word Benin is a corruption or contraction from the Hebrew word Benaim Ephraim, which means the children of Ephraim.
Now that's in your book.
Yes.
I came across it. I was like, wow.
Yeah, you remember that. That's right. That's good, yeah.
But before I deal with that, I'm gonna show y'all a clip showing you this Ephraimite, Ruth, Ephraimite, Dawood lineage that these Moors know very well, because this is the oral tradition of the Moroccans themselves. Let's check that out.
I have also heard it referenced as washed in the blood of Jesus, meaning washed free of my sin because of his sacrifice. Covered in the blood still sounds like this idea of the blood is a protective force. And if you cover something, you're putting it over top of it, right? So you're covered, you're enveloped by that saving power of Jesus in terms of being covered in the blood. But you're correct in saying that the genealogy of Jesus does point back to people who would be recognized as people of Afro-Asiatic ancestry. And I use that hyphenated term deliberately because his lineage is connected to, as I said, Ruth, who was a Moabitess, and the Moabites are also recognized as having a link to the group that will go into the old Moorish Empire, the Moravids. That's why they're also known as the Moabite. Also the old Latin term Moabitarum, which is a reference also to the Moors in Northwest Africa. And this is going back to medieval Latin. So they're telling us that. And then that's there, meaning we're told that in the lineage of Jesus is Ruth. Not to mention, if you just want to take a more, common sense approach, the Hebrew people at their beginnings are understood to be a people that have a lot of intermarriage with the peoples of Africa. The Reverend Wesley Jones that was a book called Ethiopia and the Missing Link in Biblical History or something along those lines. It was published in Harrisburg, Pennsylvania in the 1940s. And he says that the genealogy of Jesus is definitely related to the Ethiopian people. And that's no shock then for me when I'm reading that Strabo is making the same argument of making the connection between the ancient Judeans and the Ethiopians. That's why it makes sense when Tacitus is making a connection between the Jewish people, the Judean people, and the Egyptians, right? The Egyptians are an African people. Even though by that time, during the time of Tacitus, they clearly had intermarried quite a bit with the Greeks because of the Ptolemaic legacy, the Ptolemies being the rulers that came from Greece with Alexander the Great, or Alexander of Macedonia, in the 4th century BC. But the bottom line is, you see all this evidence of the people of ancient Greece and Rome knowing that the Hebrew people were an African and Asiatic people. If you want to say a mixed people of both, that's fine, but it still comes out as if you will, Moorish or Afro-Asiatic or Asiatic people. The whole legacy of the Madonnas, which relates to this. The fact that you can find black Madonnas, as they're called, that was the term used by art historians to reference these dark complexioned images of Maryam and Isa, or Mary and Jesus, including one that is in Bethlehem from the 8th and 9th centuries, where Jesus clearly is dark brown with curly hair, as is Maryam. And there's not one. This is what's so upsetting when people will hear, I heard about the Black Madonna, as if there's one. There are dozens of known, still existent Black Madonnas. And the fact that this tradition goes back as far as it does, again illustrates that there were followers of the teachings of Jesus who knew from common sense and geography this man and his mother had to come from a place where people were of olive and dark olive complexion, right? So these images, these icons are made. Ultimately, what happens? As Christianity becomes more and more a part of the Western world, or the European world and identity, the image is changed, right? Because you're trying to get the new converts to see God in themselves and themselves in God, since that's the theology of Christianity, to give people then an image of Jesus that looked as he should or would have looked in terms of as a man who was a dark olive complexioned Asiatic, would not sit well, certainly with the leadership in European countries who were trying to instill in their people a sense of value in themselves, and yet they're showing them images or an image that looks more like people from way out there, so to speak, in Africa and Asia. So in a way, one can kind of understand why the European world would Europeanize the image to accommodate their interests. It's for their earthly salvation. But the fact is, Jesus would not have been a European, and yet so many so-called black Christians continue to present him as such, and not having the good sense that the Europeans even had for changing the image to accommodate essentially their psychological and emotional needs. And the irony of it is clearly Jesus would have looked more like a person of color, or like I said, an Afro-Asiatic person.
So family, I'm telling you, this stuff just gets deeper and deeper, and it's so much scholarship, family. That's why these books that I show y'all, try to get them if you can. Now let's go back into that Yoruba oral tradition, because it connects with these Moors of Morocco, that kingdom of Morocco. And then after that, I'm gonna show you how an extension of Morocco is the Americas, known as a Mexum. That's North and South America. Now, there were multiple migrations of Ephraim into the Americas. Now, shout out to the 12 tribes chart. I don't agree with it because it doesn't keep Africa center. It makes it a one West, where it kind of has a lot of different people group. You know, the Haitians are Levi and that kind of thing. So I don't agree with it getting rid of Africa, because I believe Africa and the diaspora of Africa into these different areas like Haiti is where you get these different Israelites. So there is truth to the 12 tribes chart, but it negates the thing that gave it life, which is Africa. So we will see, and we're going to talk about how a lot of Morocco ended up gaining rights to the Americas. Those ancient Ephraimite Moors were the first people to settle the Americas. When you get into the indigenous Indian groups, the Choctaws, Seminole, even some Aztec populations, and a lot of these Indian groups, they were already in the Americas. Now, I already told y'all how this is why the American-Moroccan Treaty is the longest unbroken treaty in America and world history, and Morocco was the first country to recognize America as an independent nation in 1776. Why did they do this? They gave the rights to these Americans, these Europeans, to operate on Moroccan soil. This is where you would hear our people saying, we was always here. You know, we the Native Americans. They did take other Moors, the sub-Saharan Negroes from Africa, and bring them here. But the first slaves that they used were the Moorish Ephraimites that were already here in the Americas. Why is this history so powerful? Joseph, Ephraim, y'all gotta see this banner. It kind of fell down a little bit on your boy. Y'all gotta see this. The power is that Joseph, Ephraim, is the only tribe that has the birthright and the spiritual authority to unite the entire diaspora to the ends of the earth with the great horns of the firstborn bullock to find and save the scattered diaspora of all the tribes. Y'all gotta hear me. Ephraim is the tribe that has been given the birthright to do that. That's how you see this channel, Zion Dynasty, connecting how they say we're the Native Americans, connecting the Moors together, connecting the Kemetic sciences, connecting the Hebrew Israelites, connecting Africa together, bringing all of our people together as the greatest nation to ever walk. Y'all want to hear? As the nation of Israel. Our people have been scattered, and a lot of different black power groups are saying the same thing, but it is connected through Joseph, through Ephraim. Those Ephraimites that were in Morocco, that came from Spain, that migrated to become the sub-Saharan Negroes, that were unified by those Afghan and those Pashtuns that were also claimed to be Ephraim in Arabia, because that's where they migrated from, and also those Moroccan Ephraimite that migrated to the Americas during the time of 600 BC, where you see the Book of Mormon come in, and even going back thousands of years, they had our ancestors, those Ephraimites, were already in the Americas, family. So Ephraim is the bridge to connect all of the scattered diaspora of so-called black people, the natives that are connected to us when you get into the Cherokee, the Choctaw. So there is elements of truth to the 12 tribes chart, but it all comes from Africa. The diaspora of these African Moorish Ephraimites to the four corners of the earth, making Joseph a coat of many colors. Now, let's go back to that Moroccan oral tradition. Let's deal with Morocco and these Moors a little bit more. Now, I already told y'all, Morocco and America has the longest unbroken treaty in American history. because America is operating as a corporation on African soil. Woo! Moroccan soil. I know this stuff will blow your mind. And they know this because if any African American claims to be a Moor, there are certain privileges and rights that you have according to the Constitution, including repatriation and reparations back to the continent if you chose to exercise your nationality as a free Moor. Y'all gotta hear me now. This stuff is very deep. And they know this. As long as you call yourself a Negro, you are calling yourself a slave. Even your surnames, now this gets into your birth certificate and all that stuff. I know I'm dropping bombs. But as long as you have your surname of your slave masters, a lot of the surnames we have today, Johnson, Robinson, Coleman, Smith, a lot of these names come from slavery. You're still legally property. But when our people surname themselves, and if we all could come together and say we are Moorish Ephraimites, right there we have certain legal autonomy that we can exercise, including reparations that can be taken seriously, and repatriation back to Morocco. Now let's go into this Moroccan stuff deeper. Morocco has 70% of the phosphorus in the earth. Y'all gotta hear me. Phosphorus is used in the leading agricultural fertilizers for crops. So Morocco itself has a monopoly in case a food shortage happens. They have a monopoly on the leading fertilizer that creates crop yield for food.
But really, we don't even need to know when the world will run out of phosphate because we are already seeing shortages. And also, we are seeing countries take drastic economic policies to protect their own phosphate. For example, phosphate prices have increased by roughly 80% since early 2020. In September of 2021, China banned exporting of any of its own phosphate in hopes of assuring that it had enough phosphate to produce enough fertilizer to grow its own food for the foreseeable future. But there is one key aspect that I have left out until this point, and that is this. You see, China has the second largest phosphate reserves in the world, as it owns roughly 5% of the world's phosphate. And keep in mind that is second on this list, and it is already concerned about its phosphate supply. Syria has the third largest amount of phosphate at 3%, Algeria is next at just under 3%, and the rest of the world has only 2% or less each per country in terms of the world's phosphate reserves. But then at number 1, there is the country of Morocco. You see, Morocco owns a whopping 70% of the world's phosphate. And let's think about that for a second. One nation owns 70% of a resource that can dictate which other nations will be able to feed their populations. In fact, within the next several decades, the world's food supply could become dependent upon whoever Morocco chooses to trade with or who they choose not to trade with. Or maybe, just simply, Morocco will just sell off the phosphate to the highest bidder. There is also the potential for international conflict or cooperation, as that has been seen throughout history with any valuable resource. And this would be far from the first time that we have seen wars started or partnerships enacted that revolved around the acquisition of fertilizer. In fact, increasingly every single year, large populous countries like India, Mexico, and Brazil are becoming even more reliant upon Moroccan phosphate for their agricultural industries. And other nations like the United States have been placing tariffs on Moroccan phosphate and going in the other direction. Now, it is worth mentioning that peak phosphorus, as some are calling this predicament, may not occur as soon as we think. As mentioned earlier, estimates range from seeing significant shortages relatively soon to seeing shortages that occur in several hundred years from now.
Why is this prophetic? Joseph in Egypt, y'all gotta hear me, saved the whole earth from famine. Y'all, this is prophetic. Where his descendants are, the nations are blessed. Where Ephraim is, the nations are blessed. Ephraim has a birthright to the chief places on earth. Now let's deal with Morocco. I ain't still forgotten. I told y'all the Yoruba, Bani Ephraim, oral tradition of them coming from Morocco, they come from those Moroccan Ephraimites. The Yoruba, Bani Ephraim, come from the Moroccan Ephraimites. Jewish Encyclopedia,
my boy, going back to the 1800s. They also admit the Yoruba B'nai Ephraim. Not just them. Harvard, the Black Jews of Africa and the Americas. The Professor Emeritus Dr. Tudor Parfit talks about the Yoruba going back to Israel. The Black Jews of Africa, Oxford publication by his protege Edith Bruder, goes into the B'nai Ephraim of the Yoruba. From Babylon to Timbuktu, one of the most prized African-American scholars, Israelite historians that has a PhD in Hebrew and Aramaic studies, Dr. Rudolph R. Windsor, talks about the Yoruba, B'nai Ephraim. I'm going to put on the screen the oral tradition of the Yoruba, verified by Cambridge author Ulysses Santa Maria, that they speak Daraji, a Maghrebian Arabic dialect mixed with Yoruba, Patois, which is Yoruba ancient Hebrew language. So when you hear me say Iye, Asher Iye, this is where them Jewish people got Iye, Asher Iye, I am that I am. They got that from the Yoruba and the language they speak to this day. The Yoruba have the highest rate of circumcision in the earth. They have, not just that, the highest surname of Ephraim in the earth is found in Nigeria. Not just that, the highest rate of twins is found in Nigeria as well. And I'm going to show y'all a clip of the Nigerian man out of his own mouth saying that they are Ephraim. Let's check that out.
Hey, so now we are on our way from Ohafia to Arochukwu. So Ugo is traveling all around, going everywhere that he tells us. And Ugo, how you feeling? Moving around?
I'm feeling good.
How is the adventure so far?
Awesome. I think I'm a village man now.
Yeah, he's a village man. If you see him,
Not a village man, you're a village chief. Yeah, village.
So Arochukwu, here we come.
And this is also an ancient city, the warriors.
Yeah.
They call it the Ephraimite.
Okay.
The Ephraimite.
Let me show you around.
They are written, Ephraim Queen. Yes, Ephraim Queen. Yeah.
Ephraim Queen.
Ephraim Queen. So they believe. He said this particular place, they say that they're from the tribe of Ephraim.
Yeah, Ephraimites.
The Ephraim.
Yoruba, B'nai Ephraim of the tribe of Joseph. A lot of y'all are coming against something that you know not. I'm telling you, this Moroccan history, this Moorish Ephraim history is our birthright. Speaking of birthright, let's go into the flag of Morocco a little bit, shall we? The flag, before they adopted the 5 points, which is the ring of Solomon, that 5-pointed star goes to the 5-pointed star that was the ring that Solomon used. Before that was the flag of Morocco. For over 120 years, on their flag was, guess what? The Star of David. I'm gonna pin it up for y'all to see it. What? So wait a second. The Moroccans claim to be Ephrati, and let me show you some scholarship to verify that. Jewish Morocco. You can check this book out, man. It was like $200 on Amazon. They're trying to hide this stuff. That's why I need y'all to just, I thank every one of y'all for supporting this work and holding my hands up, because I could not do this without y'all. I'm telling y'all. Jewish Morocco goes into the Ephrati families within the region of Morocco. Now, also, heresy, politics, and community. The Jews of the Fatimid Caliphate goes into the Nasi, goes into these Ephraimite clans as well. And the oldest book of verified oral tradition of these Sephardic Moroccan Israelites by Abraham ibn Dawood, that goes back to the 12th and 13th century. In his book of the tradition, Sefer HaKabbalah, he goes himself being a descendant, Abraham ibn Dawood. Now keep in mind, Dawood, that's the way the Moroccans pronounce David, the Ephraimite, the Ephrati, Dawood. He is a descendant of that Moroccan Ephrati family. I'm going to show y'all that clip of that genealogy of the David family going into Morocco real quick. But the Danyayas, the Abarbanels, also never cease to trace their origin to King David. Y'all watch this. Those related to the David family, we find after the expulsion of the Jews from Spain, we find them in Morocco. I'm telling y'all, Also, let me show y'all some more books. Jewish Folk Tales from Morocco talks about how the Ephraimites set up a kingdom going all the way back to when Joseph was in Egypt. Joseph, whenever a person couldn't afford to give them money for the grain, that Joseph was the vizier of Egypt, he would take a portion of their land. This is how Joseph's empire and his reach extend to Canaan, and it extended into Morocco west of Egypt. This is how you have Bethlehem Ephraimites already in Canaan before the 12 tribes officially got to the land. That stuff is deep. You have a tribe that whose going forth has been of old was already in the land. Ephraim already had Bethlehem. This is why Joshua, the Ephraimites that led them into the land of Canaan, this is why he let them Ephraimites keep that land, because Rachel was buried there in Genesis 35. I done told y'all. And that whole the scepter shall not depart from Judah is until Shiloh comes. That is until Ephraim awakens and reclaims his birthright. That birthright is ours. So this Jewish folk tales from Morocco goes into those Ephraimites that had been in Morocco. Y'all got so many scriptures because I need to prove those Ephraimites in Morocco to verify the oral tradition of the Yoruba that say that they are Beni Ephraim that came from Morocco. So first I have to verify their oral tradition through those sources I showed you. Dr. Rudolph R. Windsor, Dr. Edith Bruder, Oxford, Harvard, Tudor Parfit, and the Jewish Encyclopedia itself, as well as Cambridge author Ulysses Santa Maria. I have to prove their oral tradition, then verify were there Ephraimites in Morocco, which I done showed y'all through these various sources, through the Heresy of Politics and Community, and specifically the Book of the Tradition by Abraham Ibn Dawood was a descendant of that David Moroccan Ephrati family himself. So all of this is to prove to you that Morocco was the home of these Ephraimites. Now let's go deeper. Now I showed y'all that the flag of Morocco used to be the Star of David before the Ish people got it. So there has to be some kind of network that has been going on, and I hope our people that sell our people out, it looks kind of like, I don't know what's been going on. But basically, when they gave up that star in 1948, now the Jewish people have that star on their flag, but the African Moroccans had it first. Why is knowing that they had the Star of David first important? The Yoruba claim to be Ephraimites that come from Morocco. All those Moroccan Jews claim to be Ephraimites. So why do they have a Star of David? But why do they claim to be Ephrati? David was an Ephraimite. I've been telling y'all, that's that Canaanite Moabite blood going to Ruth. Those Moors know this history. Shout out to all the Moors watching. Y'all know what I'm saying, it's straight factuals. They knew that they were the true Jews. They don't use the term because we're more linked to Northern Kingdom, and them Ish people hijack the culture. They know they are Ephrati. They know they are the people of the book, the children of Yasharal. Now I'm going to show y'all a clip by a Moorish brother teaching that that Star of David belonged to the black man before those white people. So it's not satanic. Those people stole it. That's why you have to look at what's yours and what's not yours and who stole your history. Because sometimes you'll reject something, family, that is really yours. Now let's check that clip out.
The problem is we started thinking like the colonists to know what true our leaders started dropping in. The problem is we started thinking like the colonists to know what true our leaders started dropping.
So that you all understand what they call Solomon's shield, or the Star of Dawood, the insignia of the Moorish nation, and you see a pyramid up and a pyramid down, and they're put together in balance. Hex Alpha is what you call Solomon's shield, or the Star of Dawood, or some say the Star of David. It's Dawood. That's the emblem of the ancient Moabite Moorish nation. Equilateral triangle that they teach you in school, mathematics, geometry. 120 degrees, 120 degrees, 120 degrees is what? All right. A square is what? 90 degrees, 90 degrees, 90 degrees, 90 degrees. A circle is what? And they're all equaling 360, aren't they? So you put the dual trine together, as it is above, so shall it be below. You got 720, don't you? But that's your birthright, isn't it? It ain't no mystery, and it ain't complicated, is it? Just tell it like it is. But it belongs to you. You understand? Now, persons who belong to secret societies are told these things so that they're not caught in the mysteries of the dragons. That's their advantage, because they know better, meaning they're not spooked. Do you understand what I'm saying to you? Therefore, they can, what you call, navigate the earth plane. How do you navigate the earth plane? With a compass and a square. Here's your square, and there's your circle. That's why they say Jesus was a carpenter.
Because you give up your birthright easily, and they're going to tell them what Jesus wants, and then put them up in the grand houses that you build as a Roman, as a European, when you know he had dreadlocks. Moabite, Canaanite blood, look just like you and me. And Moabite is the ancient name for Moors, your same bloodline that you deny. And we are them Jews too. And not them Yiddish who are claiming to be Jews, but are not. We just don't use it because he's using it.
So family, let's do a quick review. Now, we established that the time period of the Moors was from 711 to 1492. This is when these black Amazigh native Ephraimites of the Maghrebian region, they ruled. They were led by their Syrian brothers that came during the fall of the Assyrian Empire through Afghan and Pashtun. Those Saudi Arabian Hebrews united with their brothers in the Maghreb and created a dynasty. This is where you get Al-Moravid. Moravid going back to the Moabites of Ruth and that lineage. So you had during the time of the Moors a unifying of all these scattered Ephraimites, and they went into Spain and dominated. They also established trade routes into the Americas because they had Moorish brothers that were there. This is where you get black people saying we was always here, we're the natives. There were Moors that were already here that were Ephraimites. This gets into the Book of Mormon and a lot of other stuff. Not Mormonism, when white folks created a religion, but we're talking about the Book of Mormon. That's a difference. That's like the Apocrypha and the Scriptures versus white supremacy Christianity. Our people separated themselves from this stuff. Why? Because during the time of the Moors, when our unification of Northern Kingdom happened, and they were going against the North, which were the Christian Roman Edomite Empire, they were doing some treacherous stuff. They were burning our people at the stake. The Christian church was doing all kinds of cruelty. If they found out that you named yourself a Hebrew name, if you were keeping Shabbat, if you didn't eat pork, if you had elaborate garments and fringes on for the Sabbath to Shabbat, they were killing Negroes, these Ephraimite Moors that refused to adopt this Hellenized, Christianized, white supremacized Christianity, when they took our culture and they whitewashed, they washed that mug. Now let me show you some history into that. The Jews and the Moors of Spain. I had a copy online that was from Harvard by Rabbi Joseph Kroskoff. Talks about how they were sending these Moors in Spain into West Africa. They were shipping them to Nigeria. They sending them to the islands of the sea, the Canary Islands, Sao Tome. They were banishing these Negroes. And I got a book that says it word for word. Also, Harvard Literature. The Critical Review of the Annals of Literature talks about how the King of Portugal banished these Negroes that were despised by their own people. So when the Moors ruled, they fractured our people by trying to Christianize certain Moorish Ephraimites, and they would send them into the continent to spy out the other Israelites, and they were despised. They were dividing our people, basically. Dividing and conquering when they were banishing these Negroes out of Spain. So you had Christian Rome trying to gain Spain when the Moors had conquered it. So throughout the Moorish Empire, you have a fluctuation of who owned Spain. And to eventually,
the European Christians push our people deeper into Africa, banish them in 1492, and they go deeper into Lam Negro land and into Nigeria and West Africa. Now, we also see a description of these Portuguese, Sephardic, Spanish Jews in this book, Textbook of the Origin of the Colored People, that says they were Negro, they were black. They were black Jews originally from Judea. These were those Moors. These were those black Portuguese. These were those Sephardic Israelites, family. We are Moroccan Ephrati, Moorish Ephraimites that ruled during the time of the Moors, were banished in 1492. Christopher Columbus sailed the ocean blue and found these Moors using a Moorish guide that could speak Hebrew, took them to the Americas and took them to the Gold Coast because they were the same people, and got a charter from Spain and Portugal to license the slave trade. I know I'm dropping a lot of nuggets. Y'all gotta get these books. I'm gonna do follow-ups, but I gotta show y'all this history runs deep, family. Not just that, but we see when the Moors were trying to blend in Spain and pretend to be Christians, that if they found out they were Christians, they were burning Negroes at the doors of the church. And it says Negroes. It says, wait, you're talking about Jews that were found out to be secret Jews? They said they were burning those Negroes at the doors of the church? Harvard, E.H. Lindo. I'm gonna put it on the screen for you. And I think I done went through most of the stuff I wanted to show y'all. Also, Light and Truth. Light and Truth shows you that the word Moor is the same as Negro. Y'all, this stuff is powerful. That the word Moor itself means Negro. Negro is Spanish for when those Moors were in Spain and they banished them out. But the word Moor is just a national term for these black Moors, these black African Moors, Ephrati people that inhabited Morocco, the Maghrebian, North African region. So Moor being short for Moroccan, that Moroccan Ephraimite empire of those indigenous Ephraimites that lived in North Africa, the Amazigh, the noble Fremen, where you get the word Fremen, linked to the Nazi family. Y'all, is so much history, family. So basically, we are those Ephraimite Moors. The oral tradition of the Yoruba has preserved this. This is verified by Cambridge. This is verified by the Jewish Encyclopedia. This is verified by Rudolph R. Windsor. This is verified by Oxford Edith Bruder. This is verified by Harvard Tudor Parfit. So anybody that comes against the oral tradition of the Yoruba, B'nai Ephraim, you have not studied, my guy. Let's go deeper. So those Yoruba preserve that oral tradition of those Ephraimite refugees that came from Morocco when the Moorish Empire fell in 1492, and those Sephardic Israelites, those Moorish Ephraimites, were banished out of Spain. Eventually they established a slave trade to conquer those Moors that were in the Americas. Eventually a peace treaty was settled between Morocco that owned those Moroccans in a Mexam, and they said, okay, we'll allow y'all to operate, but a certain degree of the revenue and that kind of stuff still goes back to Africa. It's some shicey stuff. I don't know what they got going. I'm still investigating why they did that. But basically, there was an unsigned treaty between America, the Europeans that came from Britain, to operate on a Mexam territory that originally belonged to the Ephraimite Moors. So family, the Yoruba, that all of y'all do your DNA, you're going to find your link to, have this oral tradition of coming from these people, coming from these Moroccan Ephraimites. Is verified by the Jewish Virtual Library, the Tel Aviv Jerusalem Library, that talks about Abraham Ha'afrati and the Ephraimite family, Daya, and all of those of Morocco and North Africa. Now, the word Ephrati is how they call themselves. This is H673. When you read your English Bible that says Ephrathite and Ephraimite, the Hebrew word is one word, Ephrati, H673. So basically, family, somebody created a separate word when there was only one word to begin with, Ephrati. What, JB? Because when you look up Ephrathite in the Strong's Concordance, you get H673. When you look up Ephraimite in the Strong's Concordance, guess what? You get H673. When they saw that Dawood was an Ephrati, they changed that mug and created another word and said that Ephrathite just means anybody in Bethlehem. That contradicts 1 Samuel 17:12 that says that David, the son of Jesse, the Ephraimite, or the Ephrathite of Bethlehem in Judah, that's basically saying he was the dweller in Bethlehem, Judah, from Bethlehem in Judah. That's not what it was saying. That would be redundant based on the context. It was saying the Ephraimite in Bethlehem in Judah are the Ephrati.
This is why the Moroccans had the Star of David on their flag. I'm telling y'all, this is why the Moroccan treaty, this is why the Star of David is oldest, found in Africa, in Morocco. This is why they call themselves Ephraimites, however, and this is the oral tradition of the Yoruba that were scattered like a coat of many colors into captivity, like Psalm 78 that y'all love to quote says that Ephraim or Shiloh would be scattered into captivity. We know that Judah would rule until Shiloh comes and regathers the people as that shepherd rock that we read about in Genesis 49. So y'all, I had to give y'all these precepts. I hope you gained something from it. I know that was a lot of history, but I pray it blessed you. We are those Moorish Ephraimites. All glory, honor, and praise to the Most High, Yoruba, Ephraim of the tribe of Joseph. I love y'all with the love of the Messiah. Peace, love, blessings, and Israelite power. Shalom.